And my question for the board is, what do you think about self-regulation? I heard at the TPA conference last week, I heard somebody get up and speak and say, oh, we're done with self-regulation. And it seems to me that it's better to have like little brother monitoring you than say big brother monitoring you. And you know, 75% of herb found in other states is apparently reported in the news being from Humboldt, or you know, our animal training. They're bitching about that and they're coming in and giving us a hard time. And it's like, what do we have to do in the way of regulating respect? What do we have to do in terms of self-regulation? And should the ordinance be have a provision where the government regulates, or is it better for a third party like AgSite Incorporated, Oregon AgSite Secure, or the 9.31 program, more like that? What's the best thing in terms of regulation for the movement, the industry, the community, whatever you want to call it?
Well, if I could just chime in, a couple of places in our draft ordinance, we deal with that question of, you know, where's the line between, in terms of self-regulation, I think the term I would use is where we get prescriptive versus having a performance standard.
Doesn't use a septic system, and we should do paper and everything we could possibly use.
Thanks, Pamela.
Bring our water back.
Nice. Thanks,
and
Pamela.
let us grow our weed with it.
Nice. And hey, thank you. You want the last question?
Hi, I'm here today holding this cup of coffee, not because I'm thirsty or because I need the caffeine to stay awake for the long drive home, but as an example, as a prop, to show that I have nerve damage and without medical marijuana, my hand would be shaking too much to hold this cup of coffee. You don't want to see what would happen to this cup of coffee if I hadn't just smoked medical marijuana about an hour ago. It would fall to the ground and it would break. And for that reason, I support the rights of patients to grow their own medical marijuana. My first question of my two questions relates to what that lady over there was just talking about. You're talking about regulating, well actually I read in the newspaper that it said the district attorney intends to prosecute the marijuana growers who were recently busted. He intends to prosecute them for their environmental violations. So my question to you would be, do you also intend to prosecute corporations for their environmental violations? Because this seems to be an example of where the 99% has less rights than the 1%. If you want to prosecute marijuana growers who are individuals, while day after day, even in Humboldt County, corporations get away with it.
We absolutely would prosecute corporations, and that's not an issue for us.
What's the last one? What's the last one?
My next question would be that...
We have many right now going on, so that's what we do. I have an attorney and an investigator assigned only to those sorts of violations. So Chevron, Big Oil, we've just filed, I mean, we have many environmental issues. What?
You're not throwing them in jail.
Okay, so you guys...
I have one more question I'd like to ask.
So one of our panelists wants to leave. Do you guys want to finish with the questions, or do we want to just break it up now?
May I please ask my last question?
Yeah, can you please ask your last question?
My last question is, where did you get the idea that 1,200 watts of power was a good limit to regulate for grow lights? And have any of you actually seen that would be like either one 1,000 watt light or two 600 watt lights? That wouldn't necessarily be enough for somebody to grow their own marijuana. That's only growing marijuana under ideal conditions, where the plants grow perfectly, where they don't get pests, and where nothing goes wrong. Somebody could easily grow 3 or 4 times that, someone could easily use 3 or 4 times that much electricity and fail to grow marijuana successfully. So what I would like to know is also where you got the idea that grow lights shouldn't use any more electricity than, in your own words, for say a hairdryer. Marijuana grow lights just happen to use a lot more electricity than a hairdryer, just like a kiln for firing clay would use more electricity. Some things use more electricity than the baseline, than a normal appliance, and grow lights are one of them. And that doesn't mean that they're not necessary.
Okay. Did you want to respond?
As stated before, we were just going by what is a normal load that a regular residence can be expected to sustain without having to have any kind of special wiring provision. There's, can be an allowance beyond that, but that's going to require that the house have special wiring. So we can't principally permit something that could be a fire hazard to the house unless we check to make sure that the system is up to it. So that's the reason that that standard is there.
Okay, so thank you so much everyone for coming, and obviously feel free to keep chatting.